So, trying to, one day this will just stay straight, but it never does. Anyways, we did our unboxing of the X4 yesterday. And today I have to set it up. So I figured you guys might want to see the setup. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I'm going to film it so that it's here. Anyways, this has not been turned on. So a few things you want to ensure. Number one is that before you turn this on for the first time, what I would do is plug it in and charge it. Now, this thing does charge fairly fast. I plugged it in, probably took about 20 minutes for it to be fully charged. I don't know what the status of the battery was to start, but it's a good idea to do it because we don't know if there may be some possible firmware updates. The next thing that's important for us to do is on our phones, doesn't matter if it's an Android phone or an iPhone, we want to go into the App Store, and if you haven't downloaded it already, we want to go and do a search for Insta360, and you will see that there it is right here. Now, I already have it downloaded, which is great. But if you do have it downloaded already, what I would do is make sure, and this is also important, is make sure that, we'll just do a refresh here, that there are no Insta360 updates. Because a lot of times we need the newest version of the app to make sure that it does all the proper firmware updates. And it, in a case of it like the X4, that the app that we have actually knows what an X4 is, because if you haven't upgraded, this may have come out after the last time you did that. So just make sure that your app is updated so that when we actually connect this for the first time, any firmware updates, it will just go nice and smooth. Last thing that I would do is that I would make sure that there's a memory card in it. I don't know for sure if memory cards are required for firmware updates, but it's always good to have one in there. So you'll see here, I have actually one of the actual Insta360 cards that came with the camera. Doesn't come with the camera, you can order it with the camera, which is what happened with this. This is their 256 gig card, which I think is what they recommend, especially for the X4, because the 8K 30 can take up a fair bit of storage when it's recording. So simply this is going to go in where the battery is. So we're just going to pop the battery. And this is the same on all the X series cameras. You'll see there's a little tiny slot inside there, and that just goes in that slot. And you push it in, you'll hear a little click, and your card is in and ready to go. We just make sure that's nice and secure. These, if you can see red, that means that that isn't sealed all the way. So just make sure you seal it. Now, at this point in time, if you feel like it, you can pull off all these little stickers. Definitely pull them off at some point, but you don't necessarily need to pull them off now. I still have these ones on, and those will come off at some point. So, at this point in time, we're going to turn this on. We have a full battery, and basically, I'm going to actually open up the Insta360 app right here. And you may see on mine that if I go to see the little camera here at the bottom, that little camera will actually look for devices that you've previously connected already. You'll see mine's looking for my X3. And then it says at the bottom, other devices. So at this point in time, we have a power button here. We're just going to click that until it starts up. Nice, it should start up nice and fast. And the Insta360s will kind of broadcast their own Wi-Fi. So you'll see choose your language. So for me, English is next. Please download this, right? I'm with you. But I've already downloaded it. So you'll actually see here already, it says X4. So we're just going to tap on that. New firmware. See, again, this is why it's really important for us to have everything kind of ready. So I'm going to say start download. Now, depending on the firmware size, depending on how large or how fast your internet is, will depend on how long this takes. But we can see here that this is coming down fairly fast, not crazy fast. Also, why it's important to have a full battery, because we don't want anything to fail during a firmware update. Firmware updates are really important for them to go from 0 to 100 with no interruptions, no battery failures, no power failures, because if a firmware fails, we could be in a bit more trouble than we expected. Anyways, I'm going to let that run through to the end, and we'll continue. Okay, so as we are approaching the end of the firmware update download, again, it's just important to realize that this is not something that you can or should interfere with. Just kind of let them go. So again, make sure your phone has enough charge, your Insta360 has enough charge. The actual Insta360 itself may actually restart during this process. So just let it. Depending on the firmware, it may restart once, it may restart twice. It is what it is. We want to wait for this to come up and tell us that it's finished. Now, just so you know, what happened with mine is that it did the firmware upgrade as far as I could tell, and then it actually turned off but didn't restart. So now that this has seemed to have completed, we're going to have this on again, and then all we're going to do now is make sure that this is on, right? It actually says connect to the app, so I'm going to say continue. There it is. So you see this, it wants to join the X4's Wi-Fi. So we're going to say yes. And just so you know too, if your camera doesn't have a firmware upgrade, it's not going to say it does. So if that doesn't show up on the screen, don't worry about it. Anyways, as you can see here, another firmware upgrade. So we're going to do that one as well. And receiving firmware, I think what happened is it downloaded, and because this was a brand new camera, it hadn't registered yet. So it actually, you can see it update, it actually turned off before it could send the firmware over to the camera. So there can be some little, I don't want to say issues, but things that we have to be aware of, because we want to see that this actually says that it's updating. So now it is saying updating 97%. It has connected to the app. It's going to restart. So you can actually force it to restart, or it restarts after 4 seconds. Waiting for your device to reconnect. So I'm going to say, please reconnect device. Again, next. And hopefully now it's going to have the new firmware update. We should be good to go, right? Confirm, join. And again, the first time round is always the long time. After this, unless you get the occasional firmware, we have to activate it. It should just start. So it is going to go through a little process here of how to actually install the lens guards when you want. And this is only something that's on the X4. How to remove, how to install. We can kind of scroll through these, right? The different modes, etc., etc. And we say got it. And then it'll go through a little tutorial on how to actually use the actual X4 or whichever Insta360 camera that you are currently using. There you go, guys. This is the first startup of the X4, and that's it. All good to go. You should be able to click on that now, and you'll see over here that, and again, I have the little plastic coverings on it, so I haven't taken those off, but as you can see, it's live previewing if I wanted to do that. All right, guys, if you have any questions on it, let me know down below, and we will see you guys next video. Later.